have a couple of questions in the back, but before we jump into questions, what I'm going to do is I'm going to request our panel members who just joined us to introduce themselves to the audience, share a little bit about themselves and their organization. Tom, would you like to start?
I would love to. Thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity, Preet, to be joining the team up here today. My name is Tom Kurtz. I'm with Hexagon. Specifically, I manage globally our EAM, which you just heard a lot about, our Enterprise Asset Management product strategy.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having us today. My name's Megan Sneffledge. I'm with Virum, and I will share a little bit about our story quickly. I'll try to keep it brief, but really, I just want to challenge you, and thank you to for doing such a good job of kind of showcasing our story on the screen. But I do want to challenge you by thinking about, all of the data that you can think about. Within the last 2 years alone, I think we've created 90% of the data that exists in the world today. So we're talking about immense amount of data. So when we think about the way that we're capturing the world so much more effectively and more frequently now, really our mission is to figure out how best to tie that information to a geospatial location and deliver it visually. And the mission is to change the way that we're doing work and the way that we're interacting with the information that we're capturing from the field, from our sites, from reality, and using that really as a really open tool to change the way that we're effectively doing our work and day-to-day operations.
So we have some questions in the back.
Hi, my name is Mark Lee. I work for Dow Inc., mobility engineer. So I have a question for M. I actually have two questions. The first question is, with the DRE and the visuals that you showed us, was that created in-house or was it third-party collaboration?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Sorry about that. Which visuals are you talking about?
So, for example, with in your 3D scans,
Yeah.
and your plant kind of operations just for scanning of different assets, and you have the separation of those different 3D assets within that plant.
Okay.
And then identifying, real-time data for those changes.
Yep.
Was that developed in-house or was that third-party or a mix of both?
So the captures are done through our service providers, right?
Okay.
They're using certain types of hardware. We're just asking for a certain type of output that's open and interoperable.
Mm-hmm.
We pull that in, and then when you get into the integrations of the other data, tying those relationships,
Yep.
we do that internally, and then those things are then outputted to platforms like Virum, right, where we're actually getting to those use cases.
So was that visualization, for that specific visualization, was that through that different platform then, but your actual data and your data collection and your asset hierarchy, that stuff is internal, I'm guessing?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Who was the vendor for that? You mentioned it. It didn't quite.
Virum.
Vero?
For the visualization platform you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yeah,
Okay.
Virum.
And
Yes.
then the second part for that question was with 3D content, right? There's a lot of data in 3D assets and scenes. How are you storing that and managing that? Do you have your 3D assets separated in different locations? So how do you create that single source of truth for 3D assets?
Oh, man. I can get into quite some detail behind that, but if you come to a session tomorrow morning at 8 a.m., Michael is actually going to be talking about that, because that is something that it's the reason why we're out here too, is to really talk about, like, how do you transfer these large data sets and how to segregate them, right? How do you structure them? We partnered with a large infrastructure company.
Okay.
And really from there started developing something. But I really encourage you tomorrow morning at 8:30, attend Michael Hotelling's talk, because he's going to talk pretty deep about that.
Okay. Look forward to that.
But it is a cloud solution.
Okay.
And if I can just pile onto that quickly, I want to just tie into the visualization piece that you saw up there.
Yep.
So really what we've done is, because we are so focused on the open architecture, when you have so many different geospatial models and asset information, we've kind of eliminated the reliance on traditional monolithic engineering stacks. So you can bring in any CAD or design files, reality
Yes.
capture, any of those different files, and they can all live in the same kind of viewing environment, and you can just toggle them on and off.
I'm guessing that's like OpenUSD type of framework in that case. OpenUSD, are you using that, or like a generic scene descriptor for that?
I'm so sorry.
Okay.
That was,
Sorry,
that's,
I might be getting way too technical. For that.
yeah, I'm
But,
not certain about that,
but,
but we can definitely circle back on
yeah.
on the
Yeah,
stack
we'll talk
for
about
sure.
it later.
Yeah.
Awesome, thank you.
And just to add real quick to this too, because Em and I were just talking, this really brings a lot of this together because the reality capture components that they're both talking about is actually a product called Leica, and that's actually part of Hexagon. So it shows how the facilities side of it can meet in with the asset management side of it, with the data management side of it, the point cloud solutions, all of that. You can see how the hardware and software really start working together.
Okay.
Yeah, Leica's keep forgetting. Leica's a great company to provide that hardware for us. Again, it is agnostic though for us. So if you're using Navis, Faro, Leica, all really good tools, it really comes down to what's the right tool for the job, right?
Yes.
So think about like a mobile slam is probably gonna get you 1/4 of an inch. So scoping, planning, things like that.
Yeah.
Cool, use that, right? But if you get into like design and you want to get to like a RTC 360, like terrestrial laser scanner, things like that, to reverse engineering or metrology grade scanning, then you're probably using something that's a little bit more defined to the thousandth of an inch, right? But that's this whole ecosystem of various sets of data that needs to be collected. Just make sure it's open and interoperable.
Yeah. Well, one of the considerations there is because it's open and interoperable.
Yeah.
It can get pretty messy. You have different 3D formats, right? How do you standardize across that? So how do you manage that?
We ask for E57s or LAS, but we have those guardrails and documentation right now to just say, hey, just make sure you own it, make sure they deliver it this way, right? And then from there, it's platforms like Verum that, hey, we can ingest E57s or CAD models and so forth.
Okay, so you just work with your partners to define specific formats that work well within that ecosystem and then try and convert towards those.
That is open. That is open. Period.
Oh, completely open. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
We have another question.
James Newman from Augury. I have two questions, one for each group. So for Em and maybe for you too, Megan, we've been trying to do what you showed on the screen for a really long time, right? Even my past life, all the way back when I was on the other side of the fence and didn't work for a software supplier, we talked about ISO 15926. We talked about all these different technologies and ways of building open UA. And I don't want to sound pessimistic, this is optimistic. What's different? Why is it going to work this time? when for over a decade now, we failed to make open actually work. And so I'll answer that, and then I have a question for the Miami team.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question, and I'd be curious to learn more about some of the challenges that you've had, because we know there are so many barriers that there have been. I think there's been a huge shift, especially in the last few years, with a lot of organizations and vendors and suppliers kind of getting on board with the mission to open up their systems. That, along with the rate at which we can capture data, geospatial data. There's so many hardwares out there, capture devices, methodologies, things like that, that it's made it so much more accessible. And it feels like there's kind of a consensus across the industry that we all really need to be working together to make this work, because this is the path forward. So I think by really establishing this ecosystem, working with partners, everybody driving together for kind of the same goal has really let us start to deliver this at scale. So, we've seen a lot of our clients are very specifically choosing, not only operational data platforms or whatever, but all these different systems that are open, that can plug and play, because that's really the ticket, the backbone to driving that home and then rooting it in reality. So I don't know if that answers your questions, but I think
No, it's fine. The chat, and I'll just answer the thing you asked. One of the biggest challenges was who's open, is the right open, right? Lots of people built their version of open and then expected everybody else to come to that. Right. So it's an awesome thing, right? I'm in huge favor. I spent a decade trying to make it happen. So love that we're making progress.
Yeah.
But I think maybe the consortiums are the way too. But it was always a challenge. Who's open is the open we're going to choose, was the big
right.
question.
And that's Megan's right. And I mean, that's the reason why we're here, a collective, is right, because it's not just going to be one voice. So this consortium does help. But think about technology. We're able to visualize large data sets now in a web browser. We couldn't before, right? Even just sharing files. Again, Michael's talk at 8:30 tomorrow, but sharing files of large data sets, that's been an issue. So think about like external hard drives being mailed and shipped, right? That mean time to reality was so much longer. So the progression of technology, I mean, the consortiums to really talk about something like, hey, we've learned from our challenges, and we're trying to iterate collectively. I probably just pour time into the equation, you know.
Yeah, I agree with, Em and Megan. What they're saying is that all these technologies that, are up on the list, they have been there around like 15, 20 years ago. But the way things have been moving up in last definitely 5 years, the pace of change is, way better than how it used to be 10 years ago. Of course, some of these challenges will remain in next 5 years. We'll be still talking about similar challenges, but I think as we move forward, it's going to get a little bit easier every step of the way.
Yeah, and then maybe one more question, because I can't not talk about AI. So for the Miami-Dade team, talking about predictive and prescriptive, and you want to start forecasting the future, and maybe, Tom, this is for you too. What's the vision for the next step, right? Are you looking ahead towards, can I use agentic AI or generative AI or not even that far yet? It's perfectly okay. What do you have a lot of asset classes, a lot of asset types, a lot of different parameters. How are you envisioning going from reporting to insights, right? In the future, what's your milestone there?
Okay. So, and I'll just talk out loud because I can talk loud. So what we really look at and think about us, right? We're a government agency. We really have to put a framework together so that we know where we're heading. We can't just go out and say, okay, well, let's put all our data in AI and trust it's going to spit out the right answer and kind of move forward. So we're really at the beginning stages of putting a framework together so we understand what we want as responses, what data we want in there, what data do we want to responsibly deliver back to whoever is requesting the data. So as we start to put that framework together, that's really helping us drive what AI is going to look for us, whether it's machine learning or even chatbots, right? We're developing chatbots every day in the county so that we can continue to move that forward. Our whole objective with a lot of it really is especially in my area, is I don't want citizens to have to come into our buildings, right? I want them to be able to get what they need online. If they can use a chatbot to do that, let's give it to them through a chatbot, right? The less they can come to our building and they have more access to government is our huge push for us. And that even comes with delivering on assets and getting answers back on, okay, well, tell me all my pumps that are going to fail in the next 6 months and which ones do I need to line up so that I can get them repaired. I want to be able to get those answers, but I think our framework is not there yet, right? We just don't understand enough about it to be able to get the right answers back and trust them. Because I think, as a lot of people continue to say, it's trusting the answers. And if the first time somebody gets a bad answer back, they're going to go, I don't want it.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. In government, we're pretty, I would say we're hard-headed on some things. If we get bad data, they're going to remember that forever. Right? So I think a lot of that, putting the framework together, trusting the answers we get back and getting the right answers, that's really kind of our focus. And again, the framework is everything to us. So just getting that right is where we're at.
And to add on to that, so Jeremy couldn't have set that up any better. Thank you, Jeremy. But so it's our job at Hexagon then to create the infrastructure that Jeremy just described, right? It's all of our customers want to do exactly what he said. So in order to do that, the first step, and this is where we're at now, is we have an AI assistant. It's integrated within the business processes of the system. So when the other Jeremys around the world that are using the system want to go in and have that accuracy and have that privacy and have that security and not have the hallucinations and not have the open internet that's going to cause all those problems, we've created the infrastructure to do that. So the first step we have, we're using RAG right now, retrieval augmented generation. So it is a knowledge base. We're able to pull that information in. We're able to fine tune it so that it's accurate for what they're trying to do. The use cases that they can do that for are things like, I'm in root cause analysis and I want to understand how to do a process, or I want to make sure I understand something about how this other part of the system works. Think about it as enhanced user assistance. Where we're going then is getting into that prescriptive that Preet talked about, that Jeremy just talked about, being able to ask the system down the road, can you look at my failure history? Can you then tell me what are some dynamic maintenance plans that we can do for Pump 101? So it's now getting into, it's going beyond the reactive, beyond the preventative, beyond the predictive even, and getting into the prescriptive. And so that is really what we're looking at throughout this year. We're going to be making updates to get at really agentic RAG, and then eventually, probably this time next year, we'll be having a conversation about the agentic AI that's allowing you to do those prescriptive scenarios.
I would like to ask a question to Jeremy, Roll, and Tom. I want your thoughts on this as well. So you guys talked about how you guys are moving to cloud, and how has the journey been? You know, was it easy for you to convince your, say, leadership or team members? And Tom, from you, when you work with end users who are transitioning, are they reluctant to go on cloud? How is it happening?
I chuckled about it because it was unbelievably difficult to get our leadership. And it's funny because I am the leadership in Miami-Dade County. So
couldn't convince myself.
Well, and that's the funny thing about it is I was convinced to it, right? So I'm 5 years in at Miami-Dade County. I've only been there 5 years. The first question I asked when I walked in the door was, well, how many cloud systems do you have? How many things do we have in the cloud? We are in a hurricane-prone area. Why are we doing what? I mean, a completely disruptive person to walk in and go, wait a minute, why do we not have this in the cloud? It's almost crazy. And so getting that change, I always equate it to sailing. If anybody's ever been on a sailboat, you don't turn a sailboat on a dime or it tips over and you're in trouble, right? You're basically swimming for your life. And so in the county, we have to make that change very slowly and very convincing, and understand why we're spending what we're spending every single dollar. And so I would say no less than months of conversations and meetings and discussions and reassuring the mayor that we're spending our money responsibly. And it was difficult. It was very, very difficult. But I think we're at the point of showing the reliability and the standards that Hexagon has in place in the cloud, really push that over the limit of saying, look, it's going to cost us money, but in the end, we're going to be a much more responsive and responsible government because we're making this shift. It was very difficult, but I'll be honest with you, I get all the way from the mayor to my office. They couldn't be more excited about this shift of us moving to the cloud, us being able to have, and I'll just, sorry for the long story, but we run some of our fire engines on this, on our asset management. If we're not able to have the right responsive vehicle go out, and let's say we have a spill of something, and that starts spilling into the ocean, but we sent a fire truck instead of a hazmat truck, that's a problem, right? We're really in a lot of, not only socially responsible, but, we're spilling stuff into the ocean that we shouldn't. And so as we start to use it and be able to have the right tools at our hands, if that system's down and we, because we had a hurricane and things are spilling into the ocean, it's not responsible on our part as a government to be in that position. So I think after telling that story and giving it to our commissioners and our mayor, they all see that it's the right way, and that's how the direction really got pushed forward. So,
thanks, Jeremy. My father-in-law is a retired firefighter, so he thanks you as well. But no, I mean, I'll just echo what, back to your original question, Preet, I'll echo what Jeremy said. I think it's difficult at times. I think a couple things. One is it's less difficult than it was probably a few years ago. I think a lot of industries are seeing what you just described. I also think it is industry specific. I think there are certain more regulatory industries that are probably still a little harder, but I think there's other industries where, and a lot of it comes down to making it such that people feel secure, that it is reliable. And you have certain industries, I think pharmaceuticals is an example. We have a lot of pharmaceutical customers, and there's a lot of compliance and regulatory considerations within pharmaceuticals, and we have those things. So now we have a lot of customers that says, we're ride or die with you because you actually speak our language, you actually have all these piece parts, and we feel secure and safe in what you're doing. So I think that's it. And then the final piece too, we just got done talking about AI and some of the new innovation technologies. The name of our session here is Newer Technologies for Smarter Asset Management. When we continue to innovate and we continue to innovate in the cloud, that continues to drive excitement as well, to be able, hey, I want a piece of that. I want to be able to engage and experience that functionality, and I want to be on the cloud to do that.
I would like to ask a question to M and Megan. And when you showed what you guys are doing, it's absolutely amazing. But a lot of time, when we are talking to end user, we say, start small, have a small pilot. How did you guys start with that? And from Megan, I want to learn, can this be done at a smaller scale as well and still get success out of it?
Do you want to go first or me?
You go ahead.
Okay.
I'll pass.
When I start, proof of concepts, research, actually took a long time for us to convince leadership as well too, Jeremy, until we found the right one, right in the right time. But a lot of proof of concepts and iterating. So we had this whole journey. Actually, we started off with immersive technology. So VR headsets when it was starting to get popular, and then like, hey, what can we do with immersive learning training? Okay, great. I visualized this. Hey, I got these CAD models, and started iterating from there to say, well, what can I do with these design reviews to, hey, there's more uses to this 3D asset lifecycle. It was over time, because these things that I'm talking to you about are almost like milestones within our corporation, right? Immersive learning, VR, design reviews, right? And getting into pseudo digital twin platforms, and then to get into, well, how do we reuse this and how do we get there, right? And it started leading towards one night, capture, store, deliver, consume. And eventually a digital thread came in, but it wasn't overnight. It took iterations, so.
Yeah, and just to add on to that from kind of the deployment perspective, so what's the saying? You eat an elephant one bite at a time. Yeah, something like that.
You start with the foot.
Yeah, right? Okay.
You start with
Big
the
foot stuff. So this is kind of something that we really guide our clients towards, is what I'm saying here. Like, let's start out with one pain point. And even before you get to that pain point, let's start out with bringing in reality scans of your facility and just start diving into that, because the value that you're going to unlock, the excitement, the buzz, that's really going to set you up on a path for success. So typically, like Em said, we'll start with pilots. I feel like we are quite far past the pilot POC phase now. It's more like, hey, what's your number one pain point that you want to address today? Is it, work order backlog? Is it reliability? Is it inspections? Any of these things that we can start to dive into and do really, really well. Make sure you get your users, engaged in the platform early, even before you have any of your integrations or your data sources brought in. And then it's just a matter of kind of rinsing and repeating, not only across business units, but then across your facilities, your asset portfolio. So Exxon, you guys have been absolutely fantastic to work with, because you've been so strategic. I know there definitely have been times when we were like doing a million different things because of all the excitement. But just really appreciate, the focus that we've had in the deployment, and we've had a lot of success from that together.
I'll add one word to it as well too, is crowdsource. The power of crowdsourcing internally, right? We've had discussions in center of practice calls. Like, are you facing these issues and so forth? And you already captioned that data. We're not asking you to throw it away. We're just asking you to put it aside so we can reuse it, right? And let those conversations internally, I can use it for this, I can use it for that. Try to generate that value, discussions and so forth, but it's pretty powerful.
Yeah, and I think when you get the tools like these into the hands of users at pretty broad scale, I think there's always some surprise at some of the organic adoption and some of the users that come forward with use cases that maybe weren't even on your roadmap. So you have to kind of juggle what your sites and your facilities and your operations are asking for with what you have on your own roadmap. But at the end of the day, it's absolutely fundamental to make sure that whatever you're building, whatever you're deploying is what the users need, what your sites and your facilities and your operations are asking for.
That's great. Can we please give a big round of applause to our speakers and panelists?
Thank you.